Hello and welcome to another episode of Fantasy Pitching here on the Damn Right Show, and today I'm going to look at what we could possibly see if we ever get a Wayne's World 3. As it stands, there are no plans for Wayne's World 3, but as you can imagine, anytime somebody speaks to Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, Tia Carrera or Penelope Spheeris, they ask about the possibility, and this will probably happen until one of them dies, which probably wouldn't even stop there. See interviews with the cast of Frasier. Wayne's World is one of the greatest comedy movies of all time, and to this day remains one of my personal favourite movies. Being such a big movie guy, people are often surprised when I admit that this is one of my favourites. JK, nobody ever talks to me. Wayne's World from 1992 was a spin-off movie from the Saturday Night Live sketch that starred Mike Myers as Wayne Campbell and Dana Carvey as Garth Algar, where they presented their own television show on public access TV, Wayne's World, from Wayne's mom's basement in Aurora, Illinois. The show often features listicles peppered with double entendres, so they were almost a precursor to things like YouTube, BuzzFeed, What Culture, Watch Mojo, etc. They are metalheads, not formally educated by the seams of things, and have a penchant for juvenile humour. The plot was that Wayne's World was being bought off by a greedy businessman, Rob Lowe, who would change and exploit the show for large profit, from Brian Doyle Murray's group Noah's Arcade, promoting such great video games as Xantar, where a gelatinous cube ascends to a high state of being by eating medieval villagers. Rob Lowe tries to steal Wayne's girlfriend, Cassandra, but it all works out in the end. The last canon appearance, if we're calling it such, was Wayne's World 2 from 1993. It was a self-proclaimed rush job and was reviewed quite negatively, but to be honest, I mount them on equal footing. Wayne's World was an early adapter in breaking the fourth wall, addressing us, the audience, at home, and wasn't afraid to get cartoonishly outlandish at times. Wayne's World occupies such rarefied air in a comedy movie, where the buffoonery and spoofing at no point seems too eye-rolling. There are so many jokes that if you didn't like or understand it, you quickly slid into another one. The cast are instantly likeable throughout, and they are also self-aware, so that they actively don't fall into the typical pitfalls of character tropes, even if the movie tries to force it upon them. Wayne's World wasn't the first offshoot of Saturday Night Live. The lineage includes Blues Brothers, Coneheads, A Night at the Roxbury, Ladies Man, Superstar, and a handful of others, though as you can see, this is the definition of a mixed bag. Mike Myers became one of the biggest comedy stars in the world for a few years with projects like Austin Powers and Shrek, and fell from grace pretty hard in terms of movies he was making before sidelining himself to be more of a family guy. Dana Carvey shows up in projects, but it never really stuck the landing as a leading man. So where does the pitch come in? On a recent episode of Josh Gad's Reunited Apart, the only thing that Mike Myers said he would want to see in a Wayne's World 3 is scenes that demonstrated multiple different languages. Haha? Of course he's referring to the Cantonese scene on the roof of the Gasworks nightclub, where he and Cassandra speak Cantonese with subtitles, which then go on even though they've stopped talking. Anyway, I think that if there is a Wayne's World 3, there are 3 ways of doing it. Or let me count the Waynes. It has been 27 years since Wayne's World 2 and 5 years since the last Wayne and Garth reunion on the 40th anniversary special of Saturday Night Live, and in these incremental reunions, they tend to have the same hair and fashion choices, albeit with notably older faces. So the first pitch is a really wild swing. Instead of movies set in the modern times, it would closely follow up from Wayne's World 2 and be set somewhere like 1994. Yes, it is strange to think of 1994 as not being modern times. It may sound like a little jarring to begin with, but think about it in the sense that Wayne's World is not afraid to be meta and would likely hint at it, hopefully subtler than Jay and Silent Bob Reboot did. The movie would deal with the decline of heavy metal, as by 1994 only artists like Bon Jovi, Meatloaf, and Wayne's World 2 alum Aerosmith were still holding on to Billboard chart positions. This idea works well with the idea that Mike Myers and Dana Carvey are truly over the hill and tongue-in-cheek holding on to the past as time seems to be passing them by. The movie could also see them try to get to grips with the rising popularity in rap music and the re-emergence of R&B that was set to begin the domination of the charts, and it could even include a role of Mike Myers' good pal, former presidential candidate Kanye West. At the end of the movie, the duo will begin to relax as they begin to get an outpouring of support from their fans as they realise that even if they are falling behind with the times, they should take solace that there are people who love them for who they are and that they don't need to change to follow the pendulum swing of popular culture. The second pitch is set in modern times and is a little uglier on the face of it. We're firmly in the 21st century and the charts are ruled by your Swifts, Grandes and Biebers. So where are Wayne and Garth? Well, they're exactly where they were before, still putting on a show from the old abandoned doll factory as seen in Wayne's World 2. Sidebar, who else as a kid thought that that was the dream? Actually, who still thinks it would be a dream to live in an old abandoned doll factory? The more we change, the more we stay the same, right? In this case, the answer would be right, because it's exactly what is going on here. Wayne and Garth are still able to stay afloat with local sponsors on their public access show, and the remaining residuals from a live Waynestock album, bonus track by Old Man Fashioning a Kayak Out of a Log. When the sponsors run out, the duo need to pivot their show to the internet and quickly going viral for being a bunch of old has-beens that no longer resonate with any demographic. The backlash is too much for Wayne and Garth to handle, so they end up giving up Wayne's World for the first time and instead opt to try to get a new job in new media, hoping that their experience in TV and recent infamy can be used as momentum to get them in the door. We then get a series of faux pas, as it is if Wayne and Garth have been living in a vacuum trapped in the early 90s, and the way they act is no longer acceptable. The movie would end with them getting the Iggy from their old friend from Aerosmith, Steven Tyler, from American Idol, who now does a podcast, like, he might do, I'm not his biographer, where they tell old war stories of rock and roll in the 90s. Interest in the boys revs back up, and people begin to appreciate them for the context of who they are. Their YouTube numbers spike, and they begin various shows including interviews with rock stars, music lessons from Cassandra, and an InfoWars-like conspiracy show with Ed O'Neill's Glenn from the donut store that quickly gets taken off the air. The final pitch would be a classic reunion story, again set in modern times. Garth, in the mid-90s, used the resources from the old doll factory from Wayne's World 2 and his penchant for robots as seen in Wayne's World 1 to become a successful and still eccentric toy mogul and abandon the ways of yesteryear. Wayne, on the other hand, decided to plough on with Wayne's World with a succession of guest hosts until one of the rockers decided to take over the show. Think a Gene Simmons type. Gene's World. Party. Excellent. Now Wayne is just a background character in his own show. Wayne is reminded by his ever-loving wife and still ass-kicking Cassandra that they are fast approaching the 30th anniversary of Waynestock, and a music label has an interest in reviving the brand if Wayne gives the go-ahead. Wayne loves the idea, but will only sign off if he and Garth can co-run it again, like the old days. There's a little bit of Blues Brothers in the idea, not Blues Brothers 2000, take those words out of your mouth, but it will be interesting to see the relationship between Wayne and Garth over the years. There isn't necessarily any resentment between the two, but Garth has more than aware that he was the sidekick, and now he's become a Willy Wonka-like figure in the toy world and has no interest in revisiting the old shy and put-upon version of himself. They then go on a mini soul search around their old haunts to see how things have changed, and ultimately Garth agrees, because he remembers that his friendship with Wayne was what got him through the old times. So, those are the pitches. Track record of belated sequels in comedy isn't that hot. Zoolander, Dumb and Dumber, Anchorman, but its important thing to remember is that none of those movies caused any real damage to the legacy of the original film. Bill and Ted was a direct competitor for those who loved heavy metal loving duos back in the early 90s, and its sequel was again pretty meh. Look forward to a pitch episode about Bill and Ted in the near future. So the idea is definitely doable. The big question is, can these guys still make with the funny? Maya's last big comedy outing was the Love Guru, which had one funny joke.
That's great, nice hat. I had a hat like that once.
Yeah?
Then my mom got a job.
And the last Shrek Goes Forth, was crushingly bad. And the less said about Master of Disguise and Jack and Jill, the better. Myers is always at his best when he's dealing with a, hey, look at this crazy world that I live in, but I get by kind of humour, and I believe he still has that within him. But anyway, that's Wayne's World 3. Do you like the idea of any of those? Do you have any ideas for your own? Would you want to see a mishmash of all three in some kind of sliding doors, Melinda and Melinda, Run Lola Run, Cloud Atlas sort of way? Leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next time.